The storm had swallowed the entire sky, turning afternoon into a trembling, thunder-black evening. Wind clawed at rooftops, trees bent like they were begging for mercy, and most people hid inside, except Daniel Hayes. He was on the road because he had no choice. His 7-year-old daughter, Mia, was at home alone, scared, and waiting for him with nothing but candlelight and a blanket wrapped around her small frame. Daniel pushed through the rain on his old motorcycle, counting the seconds between lightning strikes, praying he would reach home before the storm grew worse. He had lost too much already: his wife, his savings, his stability. He couldn't lose Mia's sense of safety too. But fate had other plans. As he turned onto Willowbridge Street, a sudden flash of light illuminated something in the middle of the road. Someone. A figure, small, hunched, struggling against the storm. Daniel slammed the brakes so hard the motorcycle skidded. An elderly woman stood there, clutching a cane that shook with every gust of the wind. Her coat was soaked. Her glasses fogged. She was terrified, disoriented, and moments away from collapsing. Daniel had two choices: drive past and reach home to his scared daughter, or stop here, risk everything, and help a stranger in the middle of a deadly storm. His heart made the decision for him. He jumped off the motorcycle and ran toward her. "Ma'am. Are you okay?" he shouted as the wind shoved them both. Her voice was barely a whisper. I can't find my house. I can't see. Everything is blurry." A harsh gust forced Daniel to hold her by the shoulders to steady her. The rain was stabbing like needles, and the streetlights had gone out. It was chaos. "Come with me," Daniel said. "I'll get you somewhere safe." But the old woman shook her head, terrified. "No, my house, it's behind the bridge. I have medicine. I need it." The bridge she meant was flooded. One wrong step, and both of them could be swept away. Daniel swallowed hard. This wasn't just helping someone across the street. This was risking his life. But the woman's trembling hand squeezed his, and something in her helplessness reminded him of his late wife, who always said, "When you can help, help. Fate watches." So he made a choice. Holding her tightly, Daniel guided the old woman step by step, inch by inch, through the raging storm. The water on the road was rising fast. Branches flew. Lightning roared overhead. Twice they slipped. Once Daniel nearly lost his grip, but he held on with everything he had. It took almost an hour to reach the other side of the bridge, where the houses stood. By then he was gasping for breath, shivering to the bone. "Which one is yours?" he asked. The woman pointed shakily. "That one, with the blue gate." Before she could collapse, Daniel picked her up and carried her through the gate. He shouted for help, and neighbors rushed out. Someone recognized her immediately. "That's Mrs. Eleanor Grey." People whispered as they carried her inside. Eleanor Grey, one of the wealthiest, most respected yet reclusive women in the city. Rumors said she rarely left her home. Few had ever spoken to her in person. A doctor who lived nearby checked her condition quickly. Then he turned to Daniel and said, "You saved her life. If you had arrived 10 minutes later, she wouldn't have made it." Daniel nodded weakly, relieved, but his heart sank when he checked the time. Mia. His daughter had been alone for 2 hours in a blackout storm. He rushed back to his motorcycle, hands numb, clothes dripping, and rode home as fast as he could. When he opened the door, he found Mia curled in a corner, clutching her stuffed bear. The candles had burned low. "Daddy," she cried and ran to him. He knelt, hugging her tightly, guilt burning inside him. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm so sorry I was late. You promised you'd be home before the thunder." "I know," he whispered. "But someone needed help." Mia's big brown eyes softened. "Mom would say that's the right thing." Daniel held her even tighter. They had nothing but each other, and sometimes even that felt fragile. 2 days later. A knock sounded on their small apartment door. Daniel opened it to find 2 black cars parked outside, and Mrs. Eleanor Grey standing at the doorway with a cane, a shawl around her shoulders, and an elegant but warm smile. Mia peeked from behind Daniel, eyes wide. "Mr. Hayes," Eleanor said, "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "No, not at all," Daniel said nervously. "Are you feeling better?" Because of you, she replied. May I come in? Daniel's apartment was tiny, one couch, one cracked table, and drawings Mia made taped to the walls. Embarrassed, he apologized, but Eleanor smiled kindly. This home feels full of love, she said. More than many mansions I've visited. Then her eyes landed on Mia. And you must be the brave little girl waiting for her father in the storm. Mia nodded shyly. Eleanor reached out and held Daniel's hand. You saved my life. I've spent years alone, believing people only helped when there was something to gain. You proved me wrong. Daniel shook his head. Anyone would have stopped. No, she said firmly. Many drove past me that night. I saw their headlights, and their indifference. Her voice trembled. Because of you, I can breathe today. Because of you, I'm alive. Then she turned to her driver and nodded. He stepped forward and handed Daniel an envelope. When Daniel opened it, he froze. Inside were documents. Legal ones. A deed. A check. A letter. He read the first line, and felt his knees weaken. Eleanor Grey had gifted him a fully furnished 3-bedroom house in a safe, beautiful neighborhood. The check covered Mia's schooling for years. The letter said she wanted to create a new charity fund for single parents in honor of what Daniel did. The entire city later erupted with headlines. Single dad saves reclusive billionaire in storm, her gift changes his life forever. But Daniel didn't care about the fame. What mattered to him was Mia's smile the day they moved into their new home. Her laughter echoed through the hallways like music. She finally had a room filled with light, a backyard to run in, and a sense of safety that she had lost since her mother passed. That night, Daniel stood on the balcony, looking at the quiet streets, the peaceful sky after the storm. He whispered, "Thank you, not to Eleanor alone, but to fate. Because sometimes the path that tests you the hardest leads to the place you were meant to reach all along." Final inspiring message. One act of courage can reshape a destiny. One moment of kindness can change an entire city. And sometimes, helping a stranger becomes the miracle we didn't know we needed. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Daniel's new home, painting soft golden stripes across the room. Mia was the first to wake up, as always. But unlike before, when she would open her eyes to a leaking ceiling and cold floors, today she stretched happily on her warm bed, surrounded by her drawings pinned neatly on her very own wall. "Daddy," she called out. "Come see my window. The sunlight looks like magic." Daniel walked in, still in disbelief that this place belonged to them. The polished wooden floors, the fresh smell of new paint, the quiet hum of safety in every corner, none of it felt real yet. He scooped Mia into his arms as she giggled. "I think you're right," he said. "Magic is finally visiting us." But as peaceful as the morning felt, Daniel couldn't shake off a strange sensation. Something heavy lingered in his chest, a mix of gratitude and unease. Life had changed too quickly. Too dramatically. And when life had taught you hard lessons the way it taught him, sudden blessings always came with questions. Why him? Why this? Before he could think further, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Mr. Hayes," a voice said when he answered. "This is Channel 9 News. We would like to interview you today." Daniel froze. "Interview? Why? Your story has inspired thousands. People are calling you a hero. Mrs. Grey mentioned that she wants to speak publicly as well." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "I'm not a hero. I just helped someone." "That's exactly why people want to hear you." He hesitated but eventually agreed. After all, he owed Mrs. Grey everything. The least he could do was support her in whatever she planned. Later that afternoon, the interview. The news van arrived, followed by curious neighbors gathering outside the new Hayes residence. A small crowd formed. Some carried flowers. Some asked for selfies. Some simply watched in awe, whispering how a single dad with nothing became the talk of the city overnight. Inside the living room, the lights and cameras were set up. Mia sat quietly on the couch, holding her stuffed bear, too shy to speak but proud of her father. The interviewer, a calm and elegant woman, smiled at Daniel. "Can you tell us what happened that night?" Daniel took a deep breath and began narrating everything: the storm, the bridge, the fear, the old woman who could barely stand. But when he mentioned leaving Mia alone during the storm, his voice softened. That was the hardest part, he admitted. Knowing my daughter was waiting, scared. But I couldn't leave Mrs. Grey there. I just couldn't. The interviewer nodded. And now she has changed your life. Daniel looked around at his home. More than I can ever repay. When the cameras turned off, the interviewer held his hand with genuine warmth. You didn't just save her, Daniel. You reminded the city what humanity looks like. But Daniel didn't feel like a symbol. He just felt like a father trying to survive. Mrs. Eleanor Grey arrives. Moments later, another car stopped outside. Eleanor Grey stepped out slowly, leaning on her cane. The crowd hushed. Even the children stopped playing. She walked toward Daniel with a smile that carried the weight of years. May I come in? She asked softly. Always, Daniel replied, helping her inside. Her eyes traveled across the room, settling on a picture of Daniel's late wife placed on the shelf. She looks kind, Eleanor said. She was, Daniel whispered. Eleanor tapped her cane lightly, gathering her thoughts. Daniel, there's something I haven't told you yet. His heart tightened. Is something wrong? She shook her head. No, no. But I must explain why helping me meant more than saving my life. The room went silent. I have no children. No family. No close friends left, she said quietly. My home is full of memories but empty of voices. I thought I would die alone in that storm. Mia walked closer, listening with wide, gentle eyes. But you, Eleanor continued, risked everything for me. Not because of who I am. Not because of what I own. But simply because you saw an old woman in need. Daniel swallowed, his throat tight. I want to do something more, she said. More? Daniel asked, stunned. You've already changed our lives. Her voice trembled. You changed mine first. Then she turned slightly toward Mia. And if you allow me, I would like to become part of your family. Not replacing anyone you've lost. Not taking anyone's place. But being someone you can count on, someone you can visit, someone who cares. Mia looked up at Daniel. Can she be my grandma? She whispered innocently. Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes. If your father agrees. Daniel felt the world slow down. His entire life had been filled with loss, first his wife, then his stability, then his hope. But here was a woman who had everything money could buy but lacked everything that mattered. And they had found each other because of a storm. He nodded slowly, smiling through the ache in his chest. I think we could all use a little more family. Eleanor wiped her eyes. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Mia. But good news travels fast, and not everyone is happy. Over the next week, newspapers, influencers, and even business communities talked about Daniel Hayes. Donations poured in for the charity he had inspired. Strangers sent letters praising his bravery. But admiration wasn't the only thing growing. So was resentment. Some people whispered that Daniel got lucky. Others claimed anyone would have done the same. A few even suggested that Daniel manipulated the situation for attention. And then there were those who envied him, especially those who had everything yet never received the kind of love and recognition Daniel did. Inside the city's elite circles, something was stirring. A challenge was coming. One that would test Daniel in ways the storm never could.